Welcome to the Your Limitless Leadership Podcast with Jenny and Brent Widman. Here, we believe leadership isn't just about titles. It's about how you show up in every aspect of life. Whether you're leading a business, building a legacy as an entrepreneur, guiding your family, or striving to lead yourself first, this podcast is for you. Join us as we dive into real conversations about growth, decision-making, and the courage it takes to lead with purpose. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and equipped to become the limitless leader you are meant to be. This is Your Limitless Leadership Podcast. Let's lead without limits. All right, welcome to Your Limitless Leadership. And I got to tell you, man, I got to know Rick. I'm excited about this one because I got to know him, and he's just, I don't know how to describe this, just a really, really impressive person. His background, what he has done, who he is, how important his family is to him, all the things that go with it. I'm not going to touch on it right away, but I'm going to give him his due with his background. But he grew up in Matamidi, which maybe some of you don't know where. That's a smaller town here in Minnesota, correct? Or is that
correct?
Okay,
it's a suburb of kind of St. Paul, Whitebear Lake.
And what he has made of himself, it's a true testament to. It doesn't matter where you're from and what you do, but it's what you put into it. 3 brothers, Mike, Randy is how I met you. Probably. Goodness, I bet it's been 7 to 10 years ago now, at least.
Yeah, and sounds right.
His twin brother. And then Jeff as well. Mom and dad still live in Hugo, which is another small town here in Minnesota. It's kind of funny how it all comes full circle. But then he has 3, he's married to his wife, obviously, 32 years, which is, I would love to hear about the secrets to that because that's pretty damn impressive as well. They live in Maple Grove, 3 kids, Mitch, Taylor, and Ashton. And to me, that's the most impressive part when you can raise, because we talked about your kids, obviously, a couple weeks ago and just where they're at and what they're doing and just their success too. And that's a testament to dad and mom as well. So that's pretty cool on top of it. But the professional background is when it really gets impressive. He is a president, and I do want to hear more about this, president of MEI, Highland Electric, and Zephyr Management, co-owner and president of RSR Electric, which I believe is part of Highland, correct? If I'm right.
That's the same, doing business as.
Okay. President of Minnesota Elevator, a board member for Case Financial and Serpent Lake Association, also on the advisory board for the University of North Dakota, where he also graduated. And then you have an MBA from St. Thomas here as well. Right. So it's kind of crazy how we accumulate things over time. And obviously knowing you and talking to you, you don't look at yourself as being impressive, but the accolades kind of speak for themselves. So I would just love to hear, man, your path, how you got to where you are, the things that you know, and we can take the humble out of the equation, but the things that you know have gotten you there and the things that you're good at, but also how do you keep it all together with family? Just kind of give me the evolution, I guess, of Rick. Start there, if you will.
Yeah, I graduated from, I was fortunate to have parents that met at the University of Iowa. So, grew up in Matamidi playing baseball and basketball and football, and then got my ACT score, 19, and about the only college that would take me was North Dakota, which I was ecstatic. I tried the mechanical engineering route for a couple of years and was bombing out of that. And so my advisor said, why don't you go over to industrial technology? It's probably a better fit, a little more application than theoretical. And so I kind of Dean's list that out for the next couple of years, got my GPA up a little bit. And so I had 4 years, graduated from Grand Forks, University of North Dakota. From from there, moved home. Didn't know what I was going to do. I think I had $10 in my pocket and moved home, which I really didn't want to do. But 3 weeks later, I got a call from a company called World Aerospace in Maple Grove. Another fellow student was working there and recommended that they call the department chair, Ray Dietz, gave me a nice recommendation. And so I was hired at World Aerospace to do production coordinating work, which World Aerospace was doing a lot of stuff for the space shuttle back in the late 80s.
Wow.
So basically just kind of moved parts around from point to point and kept track of them, and did that for 3 years. And then a headhunter called me and with Graco. And it's a large spray painting company based in Minneapolis. And so I went over there initially as a quality engineer, and then kind of moved up the ranks there. And they set up diaphragm pumps, which was a new product line for them. And they asked me to come on as their engineer and then eventually the cell leader. I was able to set up a line in Belgium for Graco. They're having some issues with tariffs, and so they wanted to ship the parts over, then assemble them in Belgium, and it'd be less expensive that way. So I helped set up that in Maasmechelen, Belgium. From there, I was there for probably 5 years, and one of Graco's suppliers, General Pump, called looking for a product line manager in Mendota Heights, Minnesota. So I was hired as a product line manager there, and so we bought a small screw machine company to kind of grow their product line. They were about 95% importing from Italy, and they wanted to establish a manufacturing presence in the States. So we grew that. The company was called Noramco, and kind of built that up. And they got to about 25 manufacturers, 75 imported. And then the Italians decided to buy General Pump, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall, what was going to happen there. And so I was hired by a company called STI Plastics and Mound as their general manager. Okay. And it was a troubled company. And so there was a turnaround consulting company in there. They hired me to help turn that around. We ended up turning it around, kind of got it back to break even. It was a failed roll-up of two injection molding companies. One company did custom parts for 3M, Polaris, Toro, etc. The other half was bar and restaurant, plastic mats and ice scoops and bar pours and all that good stuff. And it really wasn't a good fit from a merger standpoint. So we ended up selling that, filed bankruptcy, spent 2 years in bankruptcy, sold it to a company in Omaha. And then the consulting company that was in there wanted me to come over, but they just didn't have enough work. So a headhunter reached out, and I went to work for Dental Services, which was based in Golden Valley. They owned 15 dental labs across the United States and Canada. I was responsible for Booz Dental Lab in Minneapolis and then Toronto. So they hired, it was 4 older owners, and they hired kind of 6 mid-level guys to kind of eventually take it over. Spent about a year or 2 there. I was bored stiff, didn't like the business. And
I love it.
So then the consulting company got a hold of me and said, we've got a lot of work. We'd love you to come over. So I went over there with my experience with STI Plastics. Spent 6 years with about 100 companies in different, some were liquidations day one. Some were, where I came in as interim president, consulting, helped turn them around. Won 2 turnaround of the years, one with Marine Johnson with the Turnaround Management Association. And then ultimately, my last client was Minnesota Elevator, and 1 turnaround of the year with Minnesota Elevator. I got a call from a banker 2006, the U.S. Bank, Minnesota Elevator was in trouble. About a $30 million company losing $2 million. So myself and Jimmy Hajek went down there, met with the owner, John Romness. He had two sons, Steve and Ronnie, and was engaged and kind of dug in right away and kind of figured out kind of three things. One, their margins were too low. They were in the 20% range from gross margins, and their SG&A was 25%. So you could see there was a problem. So immediately they were building a line called E-Line. We scrapped that. We had to let it go, about 25 employees, and just started to focus on the custom engineering projects that they were good at, because they were busy. They were just had a price problem. So we were able to break even in 2006. 2007 came around. John Romness asked me to come on as president. And kind of over the last 18, 19, 20 years, we've grown the business from roughly 175 employees to 350 today.
Wow.
Half that growth was organic. The other half were acquisitions. So I've acquired 20 companies for Minnesota Elevator, about one a year, and kind of bolted those on and grew our field service, which does service, repair, and maintenance, modernization, construction. And now we're in 8 states, from Minnesota to Colorado to Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin. And then we bought 5 or 6 product companies that we rolled back into Mankato. So that's kind of my background.
Wow, man. That is, I did just so many things in there that you touched on that we kind of breezed past. I do have to ask, because you're obviously in the background, industrial tech, engineer, what have you. You went into this company and realized that the margins were too low. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's not typical for an engineer to come in and look at that side of the business. Where did you learn that?
I got my MBA in marketing in early 90s. Fortunately, Graco paid for that. And at the time, I was working, in the factory manufacturing. I really wanted to be on the other side and go out golfing and visit customers. And but the MBA gave me kind of a knowledge to kind of look at kind of 3 sections, right? One is business development, one's operations, and one is finance. And so that's really how I broke down my turnaround. It's in the quickest way. Business development's hard because you're talking to customers and the company's in trouble, so you try to avoid that. Operations, you can dig in right away and really lean out the process, and clean up the shop and get rid of assets you don't need to generate cash flow. And then the finance is what you really got to spend your time on. And the easiest way to help a company, the quickest way, is just raising prices and dramatically. And you'll really find what your true kind of product lines are and what the customer's really looking for. And so you spend initially a lot of time just cranking prices. We cranked prices 20%, and yeah, we lost a little bit of business, but we did less and made more. And that's kind of the message there.
I was going to say, was there any sort of pushback or almost belief barrier, if you will, when you raise prices like that, where the company's struggling and you go, let's raise prices?
For sure. I can remember one gal, Bern Beckman, looking at me, thought I was crazy. She goes, what if we lose all the business? And I said, well, then we've got to adjust our expenses to meet our revenue. And so, yeah, there was a lot of scared people and employees. Certainly when we had an all company meeting, we kind of announced what we were doing. But you slowly kind of get them on board. Then they find out, you know what, the customer's accepting some of these projects at the higher margins. And, instead of doing 400 jobs at 20%, we ended up doing 300 jobs at 30%,
Wow.
So we did less, made more.
That goes back to efficiency and optimizing and everything that goes with it. And I guess there's a question for you too, because it sounds like there was a lack of focus on there's a lot of products, like you said, a lot of things, but was there a lack of focus, and was that part of the issue?
The main issue was they just didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't have any idea what their margins were. They went through 2 or 3 different IT system upgrades, which if I look at the 100 companies I worked with on the turnaround side, I bet you 60% of them just went through an IT upgrade, which almost in all cases caused huge issues just because the implementation didn't go right. And so, initially when you get into a turnaround troubled company, you just want to get data. You want to figure out what the margins are. You want to figure out what the revenue is. You want to slice and dice, because I didn't know. And if you slice and dice the data 14 different ways, you're going to kind of start to figure out where they're losing money, where they're making money, where the opportunities are. So it's all about mining that data, and certainly having Jamie Hayek on my team was huge. He helped kind of grind through that on the spreadsheet and the finance side. So back to your initial question, I always had a finance person that was good on spreadsheets and good on kind of breaking down the financials.
So you surrounded yourself with smart people, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Yep. You just hit something too that's pretty big, because companies go through upgrades, IT issues, all these different things. Why do you think that is in business? Why do you think that is such an issue at times? Is it they get into it not knowing what to expect? They don't ask enough questions. They don't have the right people to help them. Like, what do you see as the overarching issue with?
Well, you got to have a lot of these. Almost all of them are family owned, and they're reluctant to spend money on bringing someone that needs to lead an implementation.
Okay.
And whether it's someone internal, which is fine, but you got to remember, if it's someone internal, you're going to pull them out of their daily job duties, and they got to focus on this thing for a year. And a lot of these companies didn't do that. They tried to do it ad hoc with the committees, and that doesn't work. You gotta have a point person on these implementations that is on it,
Wow.
Every day, every week, every month, and really kind of make sure that when you're going to start to bring it in, that you're ready to do it, and the employees are ready for it too. So, it's critical to have a leader and a point person on these implementations.
So you're way better off spending the money and having that person there, because that's going to, everything equal, right? Does it cost you more in the long run because you don't have that point person, as opposed to just spending it and having that point person?
Yeah, they try to dump it on their CFO or their controller, or mom and dad or sisters. They just dump it on everyone, and then pretty soon it's just chaos, and there's consistent problems, and so that's what happens when these implementations don't go well, and they end up spinning their wheels. And 2, 3, they can't get invoices out, they can't get their inventory, et cetera, et cetera. AP kind of falls apart, AR falls apart, inventory's great, and so you really need someone, whether it's a consultant you bring in, or you just have a really good person internally that's capable of doing that.
Right there is the master's class, because how many times do we, like you said, mom and pop, we try to save the money, and it's costing you more money in the long run. It looks good on the price tag up front, but not in the long run. So
correct.
I'm going to go back to something you said, that when you brought the employees in and things weren't going the way you want to, and raising prices, and your mentality is kind of, we'll figure it out. Where does that come from?
Well, you don't know. Coming in, every 100 companies that I worked with, I never knew what was going to happen. And so you got to come in with kind of an open mind. And so you sit down and you have meetings with 10, 20 individual people, and you just kind of listen to them. So I think listening to them, because they know a lot of these people have been there 30 years, 40 years. They've been there. They've been through good times, bad times. And so really just sitting on those one-on-one and taking the time to kind of listen to them, you start to get a trend or start to get a feel on where they see the issues. And that includes the shop guys, the marketing team, the sales guys. I mean, you got to touch everyone and really just have a conversation with them, because they don't know how to fix it, but they definitely know 80% of the issues. They know. They just don't know how to execute. So it's critical. My goal always is assess, put together a plan, and then execute. And that's where all these companies kind of fell down, was the execution side.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I go back to you sitting down with employees that know what they're talking about. And maybe I'm off base here, but I don't feel like that's normal. I feel like maybe I'm off on this, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that the leaders try to figure it out or think they know what's going on. And what you do differently is you sit down and listen to people and figure out what's really going on, because that person may not know how to do it, but now you can put the puzzle pieces together, what have you, and move that. That's the execution aspect. Why don't other companies do that?
A lot of the turnarounds that didn't work out, a lot of times I'd be in there for a year and kind of get them back to kind of break even.
Yep.
And then they'd look at the cost of the consultant and say, we're good, we've got it. Or they like to shield themselves and not have you talk to the employees, and really just talk to the family members or just talk to leadership. And you got to go a next level or 2 levels down. And so a lot of times they wouldn't allow that to happen. So you just tried to do the best you can. But that's really why a lot of these fail, is they kind of shield because they're embarrassed or they know it all or whatever the issues are. So that's how a lot of these things break down and don't work out when you're trying to fix a troubled company.
Almost feels like, because I was going to ask you why, you kind of answered it, but almost feels like an ego thing, not in a bad way, but we'll figure it out.
But you got to remember, these companies have been around for 50, 100 years, whatever, and they're in nowhere America, and so they're at the country club and whatever, and they kind of are proud people, and so the last thing they want to get out in the community is the company's in trouble, and so they tried to hide that as best as possible. And that, like you said, it's a lot of ego. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just kind of where they grew up. 3rd generation, 4th generation sometimes. So they're embarrassed, they're nervous, they're worn out because they've been trying to fix it by themselves for 3 years and it's just not working. So that's the situation a lot of times when you come into these companies.
Well, I got to think, too, having somebody who has done it and knows what they're looking for and can see it from an outside lens in changes the dynamic on it, too, at the same time. Like, not that you know what to look for, but you have a pretty good hunch where when you're in it, it's really hard to see, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I always call it the idiot son. It's the son, the daughter, whatever, is super good at doing engineering or super good in accounting or super good in whatever, and or business development. But then they're promoted because mom and dad retired, and they're all of a sudden they're president, and they just don't have the tools to kind of run that business. So I see that all the time.
But that goes back to a small, medium-sized company. You just take over eventually, and that's So how did I'm going to go back to that too. You said you went from 175 to roughly 350 employees. How did that happen?
So the acquisition, certainly.
Okay.
So normally when we do an acquisitions, the owners are looking to retire, move on. And we keep most of the employees. We buy the companies, to keep the companies, not to
Yeah,
shut them down and
for sure.
cash out on them. So I would say half of it is definitely the acquisitions. The other half is just organic growth, where we continue to develop products every day. And slowly we added. It didn't happen overnight. Obviously, it's just kind of slow growth. Slow, steady growth is kind of how we run our business. And slowly, all of a sudden, you look up and you got 350 employees.
When you look over time, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here with this question, so I'll give you a little bit to answer, but the things that you have done, the companies you've helped and helped them grow and what they see, what do you feel like are some of maybe the 1, 2, 3 biggest things that hold them back? And then on the flip side, and maybe this is different, maybe it's the same, but what are a couple things, 1, 2, 3 things that you really help them overcome or see, or things that you've become an expert on top of it?
Well, it's all people.
Okay.
And so it's really helping them hire or promote or put the people in the right chairs. And at the end of the day, it's people that make these companies. And I would say, whether they're in nowhere America or wherever, they're just kind of reluctant, or it's hard to find the right person. But you really need to get strong people on your leadership team that can do their jobs and add value to the company. So, that's by far the first thing. And so that's why a lot of times when you come in, turnaround consultants get a little bad rap, that they come in and slash people and, and move on. And, but you do need to kind of take a look at where the people are. Are they a fit? A lot of times there's the bookkeeper that became the controller, and all of a sudden the CFO, and been around for 40 years, and might not have the tools to do that job. In business development, no different. You get people that are comfortable in their job. They've been selling for the company for 20, 30 years. But again, might be good salespeople, but not good sales managers. And so you got to, look to bring in some outside faces sometimes, or reorganize the leadership and get the right people in the right chairs.
What do you think that adds? Is it a level of new blood? Is it a level of we haven't been doing the same things the same way for so long? When you look at adding really good leadership in, I guess, is kind of what you're talking about. And I get that it's not like you're out slashing people, like you said, just to slash them. It's because there's a purpose or a reason behind it. But what do you see that leadership or bringing in somebody, what does that help with?
Well, it's just you bring in someone and they bring in new ideas. So it's kind of breathes some fresh, air into the company. And, sometimes it works. A lot of times we'll hire someone, and 3 months, 6 months down the road, we let them go because they're not a fit. Culture's critical.
Yep.
Whether it's an acquisition or it's a turnaround. But that's not a reason not to do it, and so sometimes it takes 1, 2, 3 times to find the right person that works in that job, and you just gotta make sure. I always say hire fast, fire fast, hire slow. And if someone's not working out, you got to move on and let them move on as well.
And it's not easy because
it's brutal.
You get emotionally attached to people for sure, especially if they've been there for quite some time too.
Right.
You care about them.
Yeah, it's not fun.
And it doesn't mean you got to just walk in and. I guess I look at it like it doesn't mean you got to walk in and let them go. You can give them time as well because you believe in them enough to bring them in. Give them time. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what you're looking to do, you're looking to preserve the entity, right?
Yeah.
And so whether that's 100 people and that's what's left, and
You just gotta figure that out. So, but you're just trying to get back to positive cash flow, number one. And most of these companies don't understand cash flow. They understand P&Ls. They get that. Balance sheet, they don't really understand that, and for sure don't understand cash flow. And so that's where the focus is. Day one is on cash flow.
Explain that, if you will. When you say they don't understand, what's basics of that?
So, on your assets on the balance sheet, you got first of all, your receivables. Are you collecting good? Is there some issues there? You get your invoices out. Do you have to write some stuff off and move on? And that's a discussion you got to have with the bank, because that's going to take a hit. And then everyone's kind of proud of their inventory, which I think should be a liability myself. But they got a lot of old inventory sitting around, and they don't want to sell it for pennies on the dollars because they're going to take a hit, on their P&L. But you got to do that. You got to get rid of that inventory that's just sitting there. Hey, yeah, we're going to use it. We might use it, and you never know. And so you got to clean up your inventory, and then you got to talk to your vendors. You may have to slow down your payments on your AP. But you just got to be honest with your vendors and say, look, we're going through a turnaround. It's going to take a little bit of time. We're going to have to delay some payments, but we're going to get you paid. And then, so that's how you massage the balance sheet. Are there vehicles, equipment that you can get rid of that's sitting in the corner collecting dust that you're not using? Get rid of that and get 10 cents on the dollar if you have to, just to drive some cash flow. And so those are kind of some of the things I look to do initially, because those are things that don't impact the customer.
So you're talking about, and this is obviously leadership, hard for leadership, it's taking inventory of all, not just the widget or the vehicle sitting in the corner. So there's the items, but there's also taking inventory of people as well.
Yeah.
And what's working, what's not, what's going well, what isn't, what can we, well, it sounds bad, but what can we get rid of on both sides, right? At the same time. Well, it's like, what is it? What is that? When you look at the hardest thing for you, whether it's changing that dynamic with the company itself, culture, leadership, what have you seen as the hardest thing for you? Not them, but for you.
For me is just to get the buy-in. I mean, once you do the assessment,
Yeah.
you put the plan, you definitely got to do that with the company. You can't just kind of go to your office and put together a plan and just slap it on the company. You really got to get by. So that's why it takes time, and companies get a little frustrated with consultants, because it takes time to assess, it takes time to talk to people, it takes time to look at the data, it takes time to really understand the business, and then, once you kind of get through that, then it takes time to put together a plan that's going to work and that the bank's going to agree to. And then it's really getting the buy-in from the company. I mean, I can't tell you how many times employees have just rolled their eyes at me when I've kind of presented, some of the findings and what we plan to do with those findings. It can be traumatic to some of these people, because they've got ownership, or they've been involved in whatever's going on. So that's hard. That's hard to get people to kind of change their views and go a new direction.
Well, it's kind of the old adage that numbers don't lie. It's black and white. It just is what it is.
Well, they don't believe them a lot of times, because the IT systems has been corrupt for 2, 3, 5 years. So that's the challenge that you have to overcome. It's the numbers aren't right, this, that, and the other thing. They got a lot of objections that you have to deal with.
I suppose that's what you're talking about, the buy-in, and communication kind of solves all problems when you really think about it too, at the same time, that you're not there to, I don't know. I just look at it like, sitting here listening to you, that your heart's in the right spot. You're not looking to disrupt things, but you were brought in to help the company grow. and look at everything individually and how to do that. And if there's things that aren't doing that or disconnects somewhere, well, then something's got to change if they really want to grow.
Well, I would say it's less about growth, because the problem, they don't need growth. They can't handle it. They can't afford it. And so what you have to communicate to them is, no, we're gonna take the revenue down. We're gonna take the revenue down, and we're only gonna do good margin revenue business. And we're gonna get our expenses in line. And then once you get back to cash flow and you start making some money, then you focus on growth, which might be a year or two down the road. Because you start bringing in new business, you can't afford to buy the inventory. You can't afford to build the product because cash flow is so tight. So initially, the revenue usually comes down, and then once you get your base company on a good solid footing, then you start to look at add-ons to products or services, and then you start to grow the business.
Transition a little bit here. When you look at what you have done over the years and how you've done it and things that have companies you've helped and what have you, how does that help just leadership wise? And I would love to know that how it's developed you over the years. And this is, it may be a random question, but how that impacts the way you interact with your family as well. What has it taught you on both sides?
I think number one is more listening and less talking. In my 30s, I would just talk, and I'd blow so many opportunities because they blah blah blah, and so I've become more patient, listen way more, and shut up. And you let people talk, you learn, and so that's been huge, and no different with raising kids. When they're little, you kind of tell them everything, and then when they start to become teens, and they got different issues and problems and whatever, boyfriends, girlfriends, and all that. Yeah. It's just like I tend not to say much. My wife's a little opposite, but I just kind of sit back and listen. I don't say much. Let the kids kind of learn and grow, and when they get knocked down, help them kind of stand up. But they got to figure that out. So,
I mean, it's kind of the same thing in business or when you're leading people. It's if they get knocked down, you listen, you figure out what's going on, and not tell, but guide as well. If you're sitting there trying to tell them what to do and how to do
that, never works. Yeah,
no,
kids aren't going to listen to you.
Oh, I know that for sure. I love it, man. Thank you for being on here. This is, holy cow, this has been eye-opening. Just the way you think and the way you do things and what you've learned over time. Like, this isn't, when you went back and talked about all the different places you've been and how that correlated, even how you got your start, that you made an impact on people or one of your friends enough, and one of your professors is what it sounds like. That's how you got your start.
Right.
It's almost just be a good human, really, is what it comes down to. Yeah. And do what's right, not for who's right, I guess, put it that way. So, yeah, thank you. This has been eye-opening, man, because I don't think when we look at leadership or what to do and how to do it, the amount of people that it sounds like you have come across and that you've had to, and I don't want this to sound bad when I say deal with, but help out, deal with, change, what have you, that's not easy by any means.
No, I mean, I tell every new employee that I hire, whether it's, mid-level management, executive, is there's three things when you come into a job. First, be liked. Spend your time being liked. Once you're liked, which takes time, you'll be trusted. And once you're trusted, you'll be respected. And I think the biggest issue with new employees when I hire them, especially mid-level managers, executives, is they want to be respected day one. That doesn't work if they don't like you, they don't trust you. So spend the time being liked. Trust will come, and then respect will come, but it takes time. So I tell every new employee, that's where you got to start. That's how you're going to win and be successful.
That's the biggest takeaway right there, because it's true. It almost gets flipped, that we feel like if we're respected, well, then we're going to be trusted. I don't care if they like me, but it doesn't work that way.
No.
People don't want to work with that type of person at all. So I love it. Thank you again, my friend. I appreciate you so much for being on here.
You bet. All right. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on the Your Limitless Leadership Podcast with Jenny and Brent Widman. We hope today's conversation inspired you to think differently about leadership, not just in your career, but in every part of your life. Remember, leadership starts with leading yourself first. It's about taking action, making bold decisions, and showing up with purpose. Now, it's time to take what you've heard today and put it into practice. Whether it's in your business, your community, your family, or your own personal growth, start leading without limits. You have the power to become the leader you're meant to be. Until next time, keep pushing your boundaries and leading with purpose.